another video, and it looked like Caitlin Clark has landed a huge win against the...
Look, Cathy Engelbert probably never saw this coming. The WNBA's whole everything's fine act, it totally just blew up in her face. Caitlin Clark didn't just dominate on the court, you know? She might have just won a huge battle off it too. This is the same league that tried to brush off that whole incident like it was nothing. Yeah, well, it looks like karma is seriously putting in overtime now. What do you guys think? Did the league handle this mess worse, or was it the players? Let us know in the comments, because this whole situation is basically a masterclass in how not to do damage control.
A lot of people feel as if Erin Kane and their company hasn't been standing up for Caitlin when it comes to her getting off the ball, when it comes to referees, when it comes to the disrespect from players and the league, and the way Cathy sneaked this in, and all these said things that is steady happening.
Honestly, if there were Olympic medals for pretending nothing happened, Cathy Engelbert and the WNBA would have won gold in every single event. Think about it. When Caitlin Clark got body checked, like she was a linebacker, the league tried to play it off like it was any other Tuesday. The refs, their whistles were totally silent. The commentators suddenly forgot what replays were. And the WNBA's official social media? Crickets. Absolutely nothing.
And Caitlin Clark are talking to the official. They're both going at it saying, hey, oh.
You could practically hear the PR team whispering, hey, if we just ignore it, maybe everyone will forget. But that's not what happened. People didn't forget. Fans blew up social media. ESPN anchors couldn't avoid the topic. Even casual viewers were like, wait, why is nobody saying anything? Because listen, when a rookie who's boosting your TV ratings by 300% gets assaulted on national TV, you don't just get to say, move along, nothing to see here. But Cathy Engelbert did exactly that, and she seemed proud of it. For weeks, the WNBA totally circled the wagons. Players started calling fans haters. Reporters got locked out of locker rooms just for asking about it. And Caitlin, she stayed totally quiet. She didn't post drama on social media. She didn't make a big scene. She just kept showing up, scoring points, and acting like the league's silence wasn't getting to her. And that is what really started to make the league nervous. Here's the thing, silence is incredibly powerful when you're winning, and Caitlin just kept winning. Every interview, every massive crowd, every TV stat, she became the story the WNBA couldn't control. The same media outlets that used to totally ignore her fan base, suddenly they couldn't get enough of her.
I had to talk about a story that's very, very important. And albeit indirectly, it involves Caitlin Clark, the Department of Justice, and quite possibly the President of the United States himself. Somebody got to say it, so I'm going to say it. But one thing I will not do is take credit for this. I am looking at the Wall Street Journal.
And then, here's where the real twist came in. Reports started leaking that Clark and her team had actually been talking to legal advisors after that incident video went totally viral again. This time, it had millions of views, and commentators were just outright calling it assault. The second that word, assault, entered the conversation, everything shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't just some sports argument. Now, it was a major workplace safety issue. It was a huge PR nightmare, practically a legal time bomb. And Cathy Engelbert, for all her calm corporate image, really started feeling the heat. Sponsors, the people actually paying the league's bills, they started demanding answers. They didn't sign million-dollar deals for a league that looked like a highlight reel of brawl. That's when, out of nowhere, an official review suddenly appeared. The same review, by the way, that magically didn't exist just 3 weeks earlier. The WNBA announced they'd taken proper measures and that sportsmanship is a priority, which, let's be real, is just fancy code for, we're not doing anything, but please stop talking about this. But the fans didn't stop. The reporters didn't stop. And Clark's camp? They didn't stop either. Behind the scenes, Caitlin's team started pushing back, quietly but firmly. Sources say they asked for actual guarantees that she'd be protected from targeted physical contact. They wanted the league to enforce its own rulebook. Sounds pretty basic, right? You'd think a professional league would already be doing that. Apparently not, because that's when Cathy's whole PR bubble really started to burst. Sponsors began sending those concern letters. Networks started pressing them about safety clauses in their contract. And suddenly, the WNBA was forced to make a choice. Either admit they'd totally ignored a serious incident, or try to act like they'd been proactive all along. Guess which one they picked? Yep, the "we've been on top of this from day one" route. But by then, Caitlyn had something way better than a press release. She had the crowd.
And marketable. Instead of protecting its transformative star, the league's leadership ignores the relentless targeting of Ms. Clark, treating its greatest asset as if she were a PR headache. That approach could turn in
Everywhere Caitlyn played, fans were chanting her name. Opposing teams even got booed when they started playing dirty. Clips from games went viral, and the media, which used to be too scared to call out favoritism, suddenly started flipping the script. They were asking, why is the league protecting aggressors instead of its stars? And also, why does it take public outrage for Cathy Engelbert to actually do something? Then came the headline that just broke the internet. Caitlin Clark wins league review. WNBA tightens player conduct rules after public backlash. This win wasn't about some apology or a suspension. It was about forcing the WNBA to admit that Clark was right all along. For months, they treated her like a total PR inconvenience, and now they were revising their entire rulebook because of her. And what about Engelbert? She had to stand at that podium and pretend like this was all part of the league's ongoing commitment to fairness. But really, the translation was clear. We messed up, and now we're cleaning it up before it ends up in court documents. It's honestly pretty poetic. The same commissioner who tried so hard to downplay the Caitlin Clark effect ended up getting completely schooled by it. Because let's be real, if Caitlin wasn't Caitlin, none of this would have happened. If it were just some mid-tier rookie, the story would have died in a day. But Clark, she brought in too much money, too much attention, and just way too many eyes for the WNBA to hide from. And Engelbert knows it. That's why lately she's been bending over backward in interviews, trying to sound super supportive. She keeps calling Caitlyn a transformative player and a vital part of our league's growth. Yeah, because nothing says vital like completely ignoring someone until their lawyers show up. But here's where it gets even more awkward. This whole incident didn't just divide the fans, it actually split the players too. Some of Clark's teammates started quietly defending her in post-game interviews, saying the hate's been too much. Others still tried to blame media hype for all the tension. You could feel the shift. The locker rooms were no longer united under that anti-hype banner. Clark's professionalism really started winning people over. She didn't post drama, she didn't throw shade, she just kept showing up and outplaying all the noise. And that's when Engelbert finally realized Caitlyn's silence actually had more power than the WNBA's entire press team. And now, here's where everything truly flipped. The WNBA probably thought this whole thing would just fade away after a few headlines, a quick press release, and some "we support all players" quotes. Instead, it turned into a full-on reality check for Cathy Engelbert's entire management style. Because, suddenly, the same networks that had been running Caitlin Clark needs to toughen up stories were now running. Has the WNBA failed to protect its biggest star? That's what happens when you try to gaslight your entire fan base. It works for a week, maybe two, but once the receipts start stacking up, you just can't spin your way out of it. And for Engelbert, those receipts were everywhere. Game clips were replayed on every single sports show. Podcasts absolutely tore into her leadership. Even former NBA players, who usually ignore WNBA drama, started commenting. Guys like Charles Barkley and Stephen A. Smith didn't hold back. They weren't defending Caitlyn because she's a rookie. They were defending her because the double standard was just too obvious. I mean, if someone had shoved LeBron James like that, it would have been a fine, a suspension, and a 2-day media circus. But for Caitlyn, the league barely acknowledged it. And the more she kept winning, the worse Engelbert looked. Nothing exposes poor leadership faster than a player succeeding in spite of it. Clark's silence made her look mature, calm, and focused. Meanwhile, the league looked like this chaotic mess she was constantly forced to clean up after every game. By the time the WNBA finally released their updated code of conduct, it was honestly too late. Fans had already decided what the real story was. Caitlin Clark got assaulted, the league ignored it, and they only reacted when the backlash started hurting their pockets. That's not growth, that's pure desperation. And speaking of pockets, the sponsors definitely noticed. Nike, Gatorade, Wilson, all these brands tied to the league through endorsement deals, started paying close attention to how their logos were being associated with this whole controversy. None of them wanted to look like they supported a league that couldn't protect its stars. That's when the behind-the-scenes pressure got seriously real. Because in modern sports, sponsors are way more powerful than commissioners. When advertisers started threatening to pull campaigns or re-evaluate partnerships, things had to start happening fast. So when Engelbert finally appeared in a joint press release, commending Clark's professionalism and reaffirming safety standards for all athletes, you just knew it wasn't about morals. It was absolutely about the money. Still, Clark handled it better than anyone expected. In her latest interview, she just laughed about how she used to get nervous before matches. Now, she says she feels like she's exactly where she's supposed to be. You could tell she wasn't just talking about basketball, she was talking about control. She finally had, and in a weird twist, Engelbert accidentally helped her get there. Because every time the league tried to sideline her story, it only made her more famous. Every ignored foul, every awkward press conference, it all turned into more sympathy, more fans, and more fuel for the Caitlin Clark brand. Even rival players started changing their tone. The same ones who mocked her college fan base now talk about respecting her growth. The ones who said she wasn't ready for the league suddenly have absolutely nothing to say. Why? Because you can't argue with number. Attendance, ratings, jersey sales, all skyrocketing. And the person responsible, the very same player they tried to downplay. The irony just writes itself. But let's not pretend Engelbert suddenly learned her lesson. The WNBA still has a huge problem. It's run more like a PR project than an actual professional league. Everything goes through narrative management. You can clearly see it in the way stories are shaped. When Clark wins, it's a team effort. When she loses, it's a reality check for the rookie. That bias didn't just start this year, but she absolutely exposed it, and she did it without even trying. Now, fans have started demanding more transparency. They want fair officiating, better player protection, and consistency in discipline. You know, the bare minimum for any league that calls itself professional. And for Engelbert, that means something really dangerous. Accountability. The one thing she spent her entire tenure avoiding. Because once you start admitting mistakes, you start getting judged by your results. And let's be honest, her results haven't exactly been impressive. Teams folding, players complaining about pay, and now this controversy, showing how poorly leadership handles pressure. But Caitlin Clark completely changed the equation. She brought in a whole new wave of fans who don't care about old loyalties or league politics. They care about fairness, they care about the game, and they are absolutely not afraid to call out hypocrisy when they see it. That's what scares the WNBA the most. This new audience cannot be manipulated with spin. They saw the incident, they saw the silence, and now they've seen Caitlin win both on and off the court. It's almost poetic that her calmness became her biggest weapon. Because while Engelbert was busy doing damage control, Caitlin was out there doing what she does best, winning. Every interview now feels like a reminder that she's the face of the league. Whether Engelbert likes it or not. She talks about prayer, staying grounded, being grateful, things the league can't fake in a press statement. That's what makes her unstoppable. You simply cannot outspin authenticity. And now Engelbert knows she can't control Caitlin Clark. She can only hope to keep up. So when people say Caitlin Clark won, they're not just talking about a review or a rule change. They're talking about a massive shift in power. For the first time in years, the fans, not the commissioner, are shaping the league's direction. That's the part Engelbert clearly didn't expect. She thought Clark was just another star. She didn't realize she was a turning point. And now, every time a WNBA player steps onto the court, they're playing in the league Caitlin Clark forced into being. One that finally has to care about fairness, visibility, and accountability. You can almost imagine Engelbert replaying that press conference, wondering how it all slipped away. how the league she tried to control got taken over by a 23-year-old with a jump shot and an incredible sense of calm. Well, Cathy, it slipped away the moment you underestimated the fan. Because you simply cannot silence the people who pay the bills. And you can't bury a story when the whole internet's watching. Caitlin Clark didn't need to yell, sue, or post. She just needed to keep playing. And somehow, that quiet strength ended up embarrassing an entire league off it. So yes, instant regret might be putting it lightly. Engelbert didn't just underestimate Caitlin Clark. She underestimated how smart, how vocal, and how loyal fans have become. And now, every single PR statement, every fake apology, every league values fairness line, all of it just sounds hollow next to Clark's calm voice saying, "I'm happy with where I am, I've worked for this life." That's not just confidence, that's control. And it's something the WNBA commissioner will never have again.